Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Friday. I'm Joe Fryer.
Yeah, we made it to the end of the week. I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to get started this morning with former President Donald Trump back in court for his third arraignment this year.
Trump pleaded not guilty yesterday to 4 federal charges tied to his alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential results. The former president denies any wrongdoing and had this to say about the case after the hearing.
This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him.
Trump was allowed to leave without paying any bail and is expected to be back on the campaign trail this weekend. Despite the legal battles he's facing, Trump continues to lead in the polls for the Republican nomination for the 2024 presidential election. Our team is here to break it all down for us. We're going to start with NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney, and along with legal analyst Danny Savallo. So, Ken, let's start with you. The arraignment itself was pretty straightforward, despite the fact that it was a former president there. There were some differences here compared with the 2 previous arraignments that we've seen this year. Walk us through what happened in the courtroom and who was there in attendance.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. That's right. Among the 110 people inside that Washington, D.C. courtroom were some of the Capitol police officers whose lives were so deeply affected by the violence on January 6th, and also some of the federal judges who work in that building who have sentenced some of the violent January 6th defendants. But it was really a tense and sober atmosphere, I would say, at this arraignment yesterday, which struck me as quite different from the one down in Miami, where the magistrate in Miami was making jokes and it was pretty lighthearted, and Donald Trump did not utter a word at that Miami indictment. Yesterday, he was grilled by Magistrate Mokshila Upadhyaya, asked the same standard questions that any criminal defendant would be asked to state his name, his date of birth, and then she went through the charges against him and the maximum penalties, some of which are 20 years on each count. That actually won't be the potential sentence in that case. And then she imposed a series of conditions related to his release, including, she said, the most important one was that he not commit a crime while free. And that was a standard instruction to a defendant. But what was unusual was she added that she reminded Mr. Trump that it was illegal to intimidate or attempt to bribe a witness or a juror in the case, which struck a lot of legal experts as an interesting admonition. One thing that really emerged, though, from this hearing is that there's going to be a big fight about how quickly this case can go to trial, guys.
Well, Ken just said it, Danny. Let's bring you in, our own legal expert. How did that particular warning strike you, especially with how much we do hear from the former president on the campaign trail at events, on his own Truth Social platform? What'd you make of that?
When defense attorneys advise their clients, even before an appearance like an arraignment, which is supposed to be pretty straightforward, I've learned over the years to expect anything. And I'm talking about an arraignment where I could show you the federal bench book that judges use. It literally has a script with some of the questions that we heard yesterday. And even with that script, as we've seen in Mar-a-Lago with the magistrate, yesterday with the magistrate in D.C., judges vary from the script. So the client should be ready to answer random questions and balance, of course, the Fifth Amendment. But these questions are pretty straightforward. What's your date of birth? Do you have a lawyer? Do you understand the English language? How far did you go in school? But judges sometimes go off script, like this judge apparently did. I think this is the admonition essentially is to not commit crimes. And adding that you don't intimidate witnesses, that's another crime. So, I mean, it's just redundant warnings, and it's probably a prudent course because as a judge, a magistrate especially, you don't want to be issuing your own gag order right there from the bench. You're basically telling him something he's supposed to do anyway, and you don't need to worry because the government, if they see him intimidating witnesses, they'll bring it to the judge's attention. Judge doesn't need to worry about it.
So, Ken, the judge did schedule a date for a follow-up hearing. What can we expect when that happens? Is that when we'll learn about a trial date, or at least the first attempt to schedule a trial date?
The first attempt, that's right, Joe. She scheduled it for August 28th, and the actual judge in the case, Tanya Chutkan, had imposed through this magistrate an order that each side write briefs about what they think the potential schedule could be in this case. And it was very clear that the prosecution wants to get this case to trial. Thomas Windham, the lead prosecutor, stood up and said, we believe a speedy trial is appropriate here. And John Lauro, Donald Trump's lead lawyer, immediately began raising concerns about the volume of discovery and the length of time that the government has had to investigate this case. And when given a choice of 3 dates, John Lauro picked the furthest one out, August 28th, as opposed to August 21st. So it's very clear that's going to be the game here. Donald Trump wants to delay this trial potentially until after the November election, and the prosecutors want to move it forward as quickly as possible. And now it's going to be really up to this judge to decide how quickly this case can go to trial. Her name is Tanya Chutkan. She was appointed by Barack Obama, and she has ruled against Donald Trump in the past, guys.
Danny, our viewers may notice that they're not seeing anything from actually inside this courtroom. We're saying details like a reporter in the room noted that XYZ happened. That's because this is this federal trial. There's no cameras. There's no audio in there. We've already heard from Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters calling for this trial to be made public. But remind us why it is that that is not the case in a federal courtroom. And then also, is there any chance that that could change?
Yeah, a lot of folks think of federal courts as a place where there will never, ever, ever be video footage or a video feed. And that's largely been true. But about 10 years ago, the federal courts had a pilot program to actually test video, but only in civil cases. The interesting thing is, after that pilot program ended, 3 judicial districts kept video in some civil cases, including the District of Guam, of all places. So there is precedent for video in federal courtrooms, not necessarily criminal cases. But the point is that what we always thought of as a complete ban on video in federal courthouses may not be as hardcore of a ban as we think. We may see a loosening of those rules sometime, maybe not in the immediate future, but distant future.
All right, Ken Delaney and Danny Savalos, thank you both for kicking us off this hour.
Now let's bring in NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin. Julie, good morning. So we always want to hear from you. What are you hearing from lawmakers on Capitol Hill in response to this yesterday?
Good morning, Savannah and Joe. Well, obviously by now we know that lawmakers are not in Washington, but even back home, they're being asked about what they thought about this arraignment yesterday, and the answers probably won't surprise you. Take a listen to what House Speaker Kevin McCarthy said yesterday. He got a little bit into a combative exchange with some reporters who kept pressing him on this issue. Watch.
I didn't see what happened today. I've been in meetings all day, but the one thing I do know is it really begins to feel like it's a two-justice system. So stop using government to go after people who politically disagree with you. That is wrong, and that should stop now.
So one reporter actually pressed McCarthy on comments that he made right after January 6th. You'll remember that moment on the House floor when he was criticizing the former president, saying that he was in part responsible for the riots on that day. Fast forward to now, and he's on the brink of announcing a potential impeachment inquiry into the current president, and certainly using his political capital to direct Republicans to uncover what they can about the president's son and steer their investigation into that direction. We also heard from Elise Stefanik, McCarthy's number 3, who released a statement saying, quote, "The unconstitutional and unprecedented arrest of President Donald J. Trump is truly a chilling chapter in Joe Biden's weaponization of the Department of Justice against his leading political opponent." She receives calls from President Trump himself. Often, she's certainly one of his allies in Congress. We also heard from Democrats, Congressman Brendan Boyle, who actually criticized Attorney General Merrick Garland for what he says was a slow walk of getting a special counsel appointed to this case. He thanked Speaker Pelosi for creating the January 6th committee to take care of this investigation. And Speaker Pelosi also speaking out, saying, quote, "The courageous members of the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack knew the evidence and they knew the law. The committee's patriotic work laid the foundation to this historic moment." We have not heard, though, from Senate Republican leadership, and that includes Minority Leader Mitch McConnell.
Julie, also you had some reporting yesterday on 3 officers who defended the Capitol on January 6th. They attended Trump's arraignment. What was their reaction?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Officer Harry Dunn, former Staff Sergeant Aquilino Ganell, who was actually injured on January 6th, and he ended up leaving the force altogether, not being able to heal from the mental trauma of that day, as well as Officer Daniel Hodges. He was the Metro PD, the D.C. Police Department officer, and all 3 of them have attended each January 6th committee hearing that was held on Capitol Hill. They attended various trials of defendants who were charged for rioting on that day. Here's what Harry Dunn had to say after he walked out of the courtroom. This is really powerful. Watch.
It definitely was emotional, definitely was intense. At one point, I looked down, my watch started going off. I looked at my heart rate. It was over 100 beats a minute. So surreal, but definitely needed along the way for what we've been fighting for all along is accountability and justice.
Savannah, I was texting with the officers after they attended the arraignment. They were, of course, emotional and tired, but they told me that they are hoping to attend every single trial in this hearing. They really want to see it down to the finish line if they can.
Julie Sirkin, thank you so much for your reporting this morning.
Let's now bring in our senior political editor, Mark Murray. So, Mark, we're starting to see some polling from the presidential race after this latest indictment was revealed. Trump's position, no surprise, is the GOP presidential frontrunner, showing no signs of faltering, according to a recent Reuters Ipsos poll. We have been talking a lot about his strength among GOP rivals. What does this tell us now?
This tells us that he still enjoys a commanding lead. And, Joe, you're exactly right. This poll, but for Reuters Ipsos, was conducted right in the middle of the news of the indictment that ended up occurring. And it's consistent with what other polls have shown, with Donald Trump with a 30-point or more national lead over his rivals. There's also a new New York Times Siena poll of Iowa that shows Donald Trump with more than a 20-point lead in that first contest for the Iowa caucuses. But I just want to go back to that Reuters Ipsos poll, because that's another question. If Donald Trump is convicted of a felony crime, would you still vote for him? 35% of Republican primary voters said, yes, I will still vote for him. 45% say no. But a big caveat on that. The first Iowa contest is less than 6 months from now, then followed by New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada. And there is kind of a question on when the trials for Donald Trump would end up taking place. And if they occur well after those first primaries and even after Super Tuesday, those kind of numbers that we end up seeing from that poll could very well change if Donald Trump has a commanding lead in the Republican delegate race.
So we know that many of Trump's GOP rivals so far have been reluctant to go on the attack over these indictments. Why do you think that is? And do you think some candidates may change their strategy given just how far behind they are in the polls?
Yeah, Joe, I think the biggest underreported story right now is just the kid gloves that the Republican field has gone, not only after Donald Trump was indicted one time, 2 times, but now 3 times. And, one explanation could be that this is simply where Republican primary voters are. Polls have shown that 7 in 10 Republicans say they want to stand behind Donald Trump. 7 in 10 Republicans say that Donald Trump committed no wrongdoing. And so it might very well be that these Republican rivals are just reacting to where the Republican electorate is on these charges so far.
Trump also appears to be well ahead of the other Republicans when it comes to small donations. That's according to the fundraising data from WinRed. Tell us more about what we're learning from those small donations.
Yeah, and Joe, small donations are important because if you are giving a political candidate, Democrat or Republican, $20, $30 a month, you can continue to do that. And that goes into the candidate's coffers, as opposed to one very wealthy donor writing one $5,000 or $6,000 check, and then you're maxed out. And what we've actually seen from Donald Trump is that his ability to raise money with small donors outpaces the rest of the field. And, Joe, it's also important to note that Donald Trump's small dollar donations, we have seen with the same WinRed data, have come after his previous indictments and arraignments. And so these have been catalysts for him to be able to raise money. We've both seen all the emails so far on him in this latest indictment.
All right, Mark, breaking it down for us. Thank you so much.
Well, even before this week's historic indictment, former President Trump already had mounting legal troubles, as Mark just referenced there. This map outlines some of them. It includes cases in New York and Florida, where he's already been indicted. And then in Georgia, prosecutors could be on the verge of charging the former president as well. Well, if you're feeling like it's getting a little hard to keep track of, you are not the only one. So here's NBC News correspondent Noah Pransky with a full breakdown.
Let's cut through all the noise on the Trump indictments and sort out what charges he faces from each state. First, New York. The charge, falsifying business records to conceal another crime. A grand jury made up of 23 Manhattan residents chosen at random indicted the former president for his alleged involvement in hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels in 2016, then concealing it to prevent the news from damaging his presidential campaign. Falsification is usually a misdemeanor crime, but Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg elevated it to a felony because he says it was done to cover up other crimes. In this case, state and federal election laws in order to deceive American voters. Trump and his attorneys denied the accusations.
There were no facts in there. I mean, normally in an indictment you have alleged facts.
Then came Florida, the documents case. Among the criminal charges, conspiring to obstruct justice. It was federal prosecutors this time with a hefty, detailed filing alleging the former president hoarded classified documents containing national military and nuclear secrets, shared them with friends who had no security clearance, then conspired to hide and conceal some of them from a federal grand jury. The former president again denied the charges.
The baseless indictment of me by the Biden administration's weaponized Department of Injustice will go down as among the most horrific abuses of power in the history of our country.
Last week, prosecutors added additional charges to the Florida case, including an accusation that Trump tried to alter, destroy, mutilate, or conceal evidence by allegedly asking for security video to be deleted after investigators requested it. Then indictment number 3 came out of Washington, D.C. Tuesday, and it may be the most serious one yet. It's been described as the January 6th case, but it's really about the entire period after the 2020 election. Criminal charges include conspiracy to defraud the United States. Outside counsel Jack Smith wrote in a scathing indictment, the purpose of the conspiracy was to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 presidential election by using knowingly false claims of election fraud. He went on with great detail to describe how the former president allegedly deliberately disregarded the truth, was determined to stay in power, and developed criminal plans to defeat the federal government. Trump called the indictment fake, and his attorneys have suggested his actions were protected by the Constitution. Oh yeah, there's also that Georgia investigation where the Fulton County District Attorney says to expect a 4th indictment no later than September 1st. Prosecutors have said that the recommendations from the grand jury made up of 23 Georgians relate to criminal interference in the administration of Georgia's 2020 general election. Remember that Trump call to Georgia Secretary of State Brett Raffensperger, seemingly asking him to change the vote count?
I just want to find 11,780 votes.
Trump has denied wrongdoing and any pressure campaign in Georgia and called this investigation as well a political witch hunt. One thing we do know for sure is that the Constitution does not prohibit an indicted candidate from running for president, or even a convicted one. Noah Pransky, NBC News.
Some summer storms are making their way across the country this weekend.
There's something we've unfortunately been hearing all summer. Angie Lassman joins us now in studio to let us know if they're headed your way. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Finally Friday, but yes, the unsettled weather is sticking with us, at least in some spots across the country for the weekend. So here's what we're dealing with right now. Those flood alerts are up in parts of the plains, as well as parts of the Midwest and stretching down into the southeast. We even have a few of these flood alerts in parts of the New England area. The flood watches are mainly what you're seeing. That's that bright green, but you see why, especially stretching from Jefferson City to Birmingham. We've had a really active 24 to even 36 hours there, ample amounts of rain working through, and we still have some of those thunderstorms working through that same area right now. Some thunderstorms have emerged out of the Rockies, too, and are stretched across parts of the Central Plains, and we're kind of just busy across parts of the East Coast through today. Now, as we look into the afternoon hours, we could see some stronger storms developing in some of those spots, but the good news, especially for the East Coast, is we'll see mainly quieter conditions as we head into tomorrow. So your Saturday looks a lot better than your Friday, but you'll want to have that umbrella handy at least for the next 24 hours. If you live in parts of the plains tomorrow, not as good of news for you folks. We'll still see that severe risk for parts of the Central Plains, and we'll also have the heavy rain in the forecast for some of that flooding concern. And you'll notice just how much rain we're expecting. Anywhere from an inch to maybe 2 inches, even as high as 3 inches. The highest amounts are going to be centered across parts of the northern plains, and that goes through Saturday. I mentioned the severe storms that we could see, and today it's mainly focused into parts of the northeast. We'll also see the plains and stretching down into parts of the southeast. By tomorrow, that slight risk will shift, centered really over Kansas City to Scott City and into parts of Springfield, into Missouri. We'll see that too. And then by Sunday, heads up for the Midwest. Places like Chicago, Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, stretching down to Nashville. You could see some of those stronger storms. And if we're looking ahead to Monday, that's when we'll see that activity start to work into parts of the northeast. But of course, the heat, guys, it sticks around, same spots, and you can see why those triple-digit temperatures are going to stick around with us. It's brutal there. There's no end in sight either.
I love how you didn't want to talk about Monday because it's Friday. We don't want to think about Monday yet.
It's Monday.
All right. Thanks, Angie.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.